welcome to the December 9th Clifton Park Town Board meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Pat, if you call the roll.
Councilman Whalen is absent this evening. Councilman Sanders. Here. Councilman Williams.
Here.
Councilman Baldwin. Here. But there.
Here. No minutes tonight. Communications and announcements. Have a update on youth court.
Well, youth court is going strong. We just completed our training sessions, and we're now into the hearing portion of the year. And youth court, for those who don't know, is a wildly successful program that we have instituted. And it's what it is. It gives youthful offenders a second chance. If they are arrested or in violation of a law and are sent to us, what we do is we put a team together of kids who we train to be attorneys and other courtroom roles. And what you do is you help the offender get a second chance and put this offender through a program to make sure that they understand, take responsibility, have some accountability for their actions, and learn how to be a better member of our community and to give back. So it's a really tremendous program. It's been very successful. Like I said, we just finished training, but we do have some opportunities. If anyone in this room is still interested in joining youth court, you do not need to be trained to be a juror. And I can also offer some training outside of what we've already done, the more structured training classes that we've had. If anyone's interested, just come see me up after the meeting.
I came downstairs. I didn't know if I was in the right place. I thought I was in High School East. Let me guess. This must be like the last day for you to attend a public meeting. Is that correct? Is this your last chance? Yeah, that's all right. You get it's okay. Well, that's good. It's good to have you here. A couple of events coming up. Things slow down this time of year, except for the weather, of course. The Clifton Park Community Chorus presents a swinging Christmas Sunday, December 15th at 3 o'clock. And this will take place at the Shen United Methodist Church. So it's just a really nice Christmas show, free of charge, at the Shen United Methodist Church right over here on 146. So come by and see the Clifton Park Community Chorus. Also, to keep you in the Christmas mood, the Not So Common Players will be performing a Christmas carol, and that'll be over at High School East, Little Theater. So, December 13th at 8 p.m., the 14th at 2 and 8, 2 shows that day. And then a matinee on the 15th at 2 o'clock. So a couple of very nice Christmas shows coming up. If you didn't catch all of that information, you can find it at cliftonpark.org. I do want to really congratulate and thank the Bishop Ferry Fire Department and the volunteers that invested a great deal of time in making a young man's probably decade. Patrick Kane, he's a young man at 9-10 years old. He's had a lot of health challenges in his young life. He's a student over at Octay, and they made him an honorary firefighter. And it was just they went all out. He received an official helmet. They actually created a fire. It was all controlled. But it was they had this huge metal container, and what they did, and it was right outside at Octay, and what they did was they brought him in as part of a convoy of 2 or 3 fire trucks, and he was in one of the fire trucks. So they set the fire before he got there, and then all the trucks come in, and then they get out. They already there was some firefighters that had arrived a little earlier, so they already had a hose ready. And they got little Patrick out of the truck, and he went down, and they helped him hold the hose, and he put the fire out. They did just from start to finish, just an incredible job by the Bishop Ferry Fire Department, and I do want to thank them. They had requested support for this event from our Community Action Fund. For those that aren't aware, our Community Action Fund, this was the first year in 2019, we distributed grants of $8,400 to 17 organizations right in our community doing great things for people of all ages each and every day. And the source of the funds was not your tax money, it was not some grant from the state. It was donation of bottles and cans at the transfer station, and that's it. So it was a way for us to divert those returnable bottles and cans that were being recycled at the transfer station, but instead we were able to capture those bottles and cans, redeem them, take that money and use it for good within our community. So $8,400 in bottles and cans, and that was not a full year. I think next year we'll probably end up with about $12,000 that we'll be able to give out, hopefully to 20-something organizations instead of 17 that can really benefit from that money. So this was one of the things that, one of the grants that we approved here as a town board was for this event, and it was just great to see Patrick and his family. Just he was overwhelmed. It was an amazing day. So I just want to thank the Bishop Ferry Fire Department. I want to thank everybody that worked real hard last Monday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, really, as we had that wonderful snowstorm fly through. Last Monday, it was real bad all day. Town hall was open, normal operations, normal hours, and we had a town board meeting scheduled for our usual 7 o'clock last Monday. During the day, we ended up moving it up to 5 o'clock because there was a forecast for another heavy round of snow into the 6, 7, 8 o'clock time frame. So we did move the meeting up to 5 o'clock and did finish the meeting. One of the things that we accomplished at that meeting was to move our streetlight acquisition project to the next step. Clifton Park will be one of the first, if not the first, municipalities in New York State to purchase our streetlights within our town. Once we make that purchase, we will change out all the bulbs to LEDs. It'll reduce the town's energy usage by 60 to 65%, which, if you save energy, you're saving a heck of a lot of money. And will also eliminate the facility charges that every municipality pays on every street light within the borders of their municipality. So the savings are powerful, millions of dollars over time, and we're very excited to move this initiative forward. Like I said, we'll be one of the first, if not the first, in this National Grid service area to get this project done. So we moved that to the next step last Monday. It's a project we've been working on for almost 2 years. So you may have read about it, certainly been out in the press enough over the last couple of years, but very exciting initiative for 2020. Any other communications or announcements at this time? Okay. Well, we'll talk about another initiative we've been working on for a long period of time, and that is the 37 acres in the Exit 9 area that the town purchased from the Shenandoah School District. The 37 acres, if you're not sure where it's located, probably the easiest description is if you're at Staples and you stood and you went from inside the store, you're walking out and looked across, all that wooded area there, that's the land. It's accessible from a trail system, kind of a rough trail system that has evolved over the years. And I'm sure there's some of you that have been in there, right? Yeah? Yeah, you probably used it as a shortcut. Quickly went in and out, no lingering, I'm sure. But it is a strategic place for a lot of reasons. And it is a good way to access coming from the Moe Road Trail, coming from the Shenandoah campus to get over to Exit 9, and other locations that you want to travel to. It's a safe way to do it. So we're going to maintain that. And you'll see here, you'll see what the plan at this point looks like. And we certainly want to maintain that. We want to maintain it as a safe way for many people of all ages to get from one place to another in the Exit 9 area, interconnecting different entities within the town is something we've been working hard to do with trail systems throughout the town. And we've had a lot of new miles and trails, right, Pat?
Yes.
We've had a lot of new miles and trails. It's very good. A lot of acres of open space as well. That's good. Thank you. I love it when she reminds me. You know, so there's been some strategic connections, like the trail that runs behind the library, for instance. Once that was installed, you could easily get from the Moe Road Trail to the library, to the Y, and other Shen schools in the back there, or further on to Exit 9. We're also, we've installed some blinking pedestrian lights at different points to provide safer crossing of streets. You're going to see more of that. We will be installing 4 major crosswalks next year as well in the Exit 9 area. So there's many things that we're trying to do to make it not only easier, friendlier, safer, but inviting for people to come to the Exit 9 area and use and to visit and to use these options for safe travel as pedestrians. So you're going to see some of that here tonight. Now, we've gone through a comprehensive public planning process. We followed the same template that we followed for many other long-term strategic planning processes that we've embarked upon and completed in the last 20 years. And certainly this is no different. This project has a lot of interest. So you picked a good night to come and attend a public meeting, because you'll see firsthand what we're looking to do on that 37 acres. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to B and Planning, and they're going to show us what the plan looks like at this point.
I'll try not to block here. Excuse me. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Wow, it's a lot more people than I realized. At the beginning of the year, we embarked on a project to work with the town of Clifton Park to develop a vision and a master plan for this 37-acre piece of property that's located right in the heart of the town center. And tonight, as we come to the end of the
So
year,
where Staples is, as I mentioned.
Staples is right here,
There you go.
and the high school is over on this side. It's a shame no one from the high school
Shattuckon is south.
showed up tonight.
Shattuckon School is south.
Down in here, there we go.
Yep.
And the library is down here just off the map. So the parcel is approximately this area of land right here. So as we come to the end of the year right now, I'm happy to present the effort of that work that we've been working on. Our goal from the beginning has always been to understand the character of the land, find out what the people of Clifton Park want, and use this information to develop a blueprint which will act as a starting point moving forward that will strike a balance between preservation and creating a unique community attraction in the area. So the Town Park Master Plan is now complete, as it were. It's broken up essentially into 5 different sections. It starts out with the background and goals. The background including the whole, trying to tell the story of how the community came together and said we would like this piece of property to be something different than a lot of the other development that's happening, and all of the effort that went around the referendums and the vote, to get out the vote effort, the goals of the project. Chapter 2 goes through the existing conditions of the property. What is the terrain like? What is the environment, the flora and fauna that we found with our ecology study? Part 3 reviews the public input, all of the different public workshops and meetings that we held on the design as we were going through the process. Chapter 4 gets into analysis and recommendations. What were some of our thoughts, ideas, and concerns as we went through the design? And then finally, Chapter 5 gets into the park master plan. As I mentioned, it starts to tell the story of the property, explaining what is a master plan, how is this going to be used going forward, and explaining the planning process that evolved. It gets into the history of the site, existing features and surrounding context, as well as the ecological findings from our ecology sub-consultant that worked with us, as well as the site analysis findings. Then it gets into the public input process. As some of you may know or may not know, we had a sort of a two-part process to how we went about designing this. To start out with, we started with the visioning process that really started to try and get people to only talk about what is the general character that you're looking for. Without getting into the design or any specifics, what's the sort of general character or feel that you would like to see in this park? And we use that to try and get the general theme first. And then using that, then we followed that up later with an online survey to try and eke out some of this information from a wider scale, because not everybody could be at the visioning workshop. And then followed that up with a design charrette, where we said, okay, looking at what we've heard from the public, a lot of people said, you know, we'd really like to keep a good portion of this property pretty natural and keep it natural in character. What areas of the park would we want to keep natural? What areas of the park would you like to see evolved into some more park program? And what sort of activities might you like to see? So we started staging a process such as that, so we didn't just jump into the design right away. And then, as some of you know, we then gave a draft September presentation where we had a draft plan to present and get some feedback at that point. We then get into some of the opportunities and constraints that we found on the property. Just for example, I mean, it's a pretty large piece of property, 37 acres, but different. You walk around the property, it has different areas of character. As you get to the sort of the north end of the property, you can sense a lot of the noise and traffic along 146. Whereas you get to the southern end of the property toward the elementary school, it becomes much more quiet and more peaceful in that area. Things such as that. And these are elements which help to inform the design and inform some of our initial findings as we went along. We then began to get into working out some different design concepts, just conceptually, what if we did this, what if we did that. Our main theme from the beginning was to connect from Moe Road and the west over by the high school over to the east to the town center, in creating a really nice pedestrian connection that would travel through the area. That was sort of the main spine of the idea, and then from that, different design iterations came off of, where we looked at different routes, what areas we wanted to protect of the site. In the sort of toward the end, this was one of the early concept ideas that we started to settle on, because a lot of people had indicated that they wanted to see a good chunk of the property preserved or kept natural. We determined that some of the most valuable area to keep natural is this area down here in the sort of the southeast area. You have a stream that passes through the area here. This was essentially the older growth trees, the more mature trees, and the nicer area of the woods, whereas the area up to the north and here, these were generally younger growth trees, some pine plantation. That wasn't as ecologically important in many ways, and you also had the impacts from the sound and so forth from the adjacent commercial. And so this different conceptual idea we liked this because it tended to preserve this whole area down here as natural, and it kept a lot of the activity and programming along here, which we felt wasn't as important to preserve. So this design had a pedestrian path which carried all the way through, opening up to a sort of a large lawn glade, and then a pedestrian path which came out, up and around, and then came out by the public safety building, and then arced down sort of outside the property. But we were able to do that because this adjacent property right here next to the park is also owned by the town. So the path comes out of the park and down here past Staples to where Southside Drive is. And that we felt was very important because we wanted to create a connection that way over to the east of the park. So this was the design that we kind of fell upon, that we felt was the strongest conceptually, and it was the launching point for what we did later on. In Chapter 5, it's broken down into a vision statement, the master plan rendering, and a lot of details about some illustrative examples of the type of style and theme and character we're looking for, future design considerations, design implementation, how we feel this should be rolled out in the next steps, plans outside of the park, even though we were really constrained by designing the park inside of town land, there were considerations that sort of spill over into the surrounding neighborhood. Different phasing options for how the park could be constructed, funding options, a look at costs and maintenance over the coming years, and then eventually a conclusion. This is the design we have right now with the Clifton Park Town Center Master Plan. As the previous sketch showed you, the main theme is this pedestrian path which comes in from Moe Road, opens up to a large open glade here with a circular path around it, and then the path continues on through the park and around, out along Maxwell Drive and down here to Southside Drive. That's a continuous, say, about 15-foot wide pedestrian path that continues all the way through the area. As I mentioned, this design largely keeps this whole area of the property relatively natural. The only thing that's passing through this area are some small footpaths and trails. They won't disturb the area too much. You might notice that some of this has changed since the draft that we presented in September. Previously, we had a more grand design coming in with a pedestrian path in the middle. We've since reconfigured that because we wanted to try and separate the pedestrian path with the vehicular path. So right now, the pedestrian path would come in right along where it is right now, the existing opening and footpath that you see right here in this photo. It would just maintain that same location. A vehicular drive would come in off of Moe Road and loop back around to provide a parking area up here. In the next area, as you approach this area here on the path, there would be sort of a gateway element that would be an enclosed sort of cluster of trees which would act as a frame, framing the entryway as you enter into the park, similar to this photo right here, sort of create an archway, a gateway as you enter the main part of the park. And then as you continue farther, it opens up into this large lawn, the area we're calling the glade. The glade would be a mixture of some of the bigger, older, healthier trees that already exist on the property, as well as some new growth. So even though you have a lawn area, the idea is you have some nice shaded areas here on the lawn so you can relax and it's not just open and blazing sun. At the end of that glade, if you will, would be an open-air pavilion, which could act as just a seating gazebo while you're relaxing, or it's large enough and open enough to act as a stage for if you want to have a performance theater, some music, a theater band, and then the path would loop around and then come back, and it continues along this route where there would be areas which are carved out and you would have some seating benches along the way. Here, this is an earlier rendition right here of what we thought it might look like. This is sort of a photo simulation right here of how we envision that design right now. As you see, this is the main path right through here. There would be benches along the way, Also, very low-level lighting is spaced as far as we can along the way, so that at nighttime when you're walking through, especially in the the darker winter months, you can still get through, have a sense of where you are, and feel safe without making it too bright and onerous. There could be some children elements along the way, which are sort of decorative elements along the path, which would sort of activate with the children, give them a little bit of activity play space without creating a formal playground. And on either side of the path, because one of the things we heard was people were generally concerned about ticks, a lot of that, so we wanted to create sort of a buffer zone on either side of the path, so you're not walking on the path and brushing up against, tall grasses and so forth. So there would be a buffer edge on either side. And important to note, and a lot of this came from our ecological study, was that we wanted to keep the majority of the parkland as it is natural in its truest sense, in that we don't want to go in and clean up downed limbs and clean up the leaves and all that. We want to leave most of that just natural, because the downed limbs and leaves and sticks and brush are all part of the natural cycle of the woods. As that material breaks down and decomposes, it really provides nutrients to the soil. So we want to leave that intact. The only areas of the park which we would be cleaning up, if you will, would be limbing branches and placing some landscaping would be right along the traveled paths, along the pedestrian paths. So for the most part, we'd like to keep the woods as natural as possible and unkempt, if you will. Leave that to the chipmunks. But we would try and maintain just the narrow paths where pedestrians are. The path would then continue on, and there would be side trails, if you will, which would branch off. This side trail branching off with a little footbridge which crosses the stream right here. This is an early view of what we thought it might look like. Here is another sort of illustrative example of how we think it might look, where you have a narrow path that goes over a wooden footbridge. On either side of the trail, there would be augmented by new plantings, which would be native to the area to try and really define and make it a very pleasant, nice walk right here. But really outside of that, we're keeping the terrain natural as it were. This is another illustrative example of the type of character or feeling that we're looking for. Again, while you have the plantings on either side, you could have markers and display cards that identify what the different tree species are, different plant species are. So as you're walking through, you can learn about some of the plants and growth there. And there's opportunities along some of these trails. This trail right here and this trail right here both pass along either side of the stream. And so there's opportunities where you could have stepping stone rocks that go down to the water, so that, especially for younger children, allows them to get down right up close to the water, interact with the water and any frogs, amphibians that might be present in the area, and sort of interact with nature so they're not really separated from it, if you will. And then over here, we have on this trail that branches off down to the south, we have a number of picnic pavilions that would be established along this path, as well as an outdoor classroom, which we see as sort of an outdoor amphitheater style, which could be used by the library, the high school, the elementary school for different outings. You could come have a class outdoors, give a speech, and provide some of that outdoor experience right there. Then there would be, right here near this parking lot, there's a facility building which would house some restrooms eventually, as well as a similar building on the east side. So we would have essentially restrooms at either end of the park, something that a lot of people felt was important, is having easy access to restrooms. And at this juncture right here, where the path comes into the park from Maxwell Road, a gateway structure, which would be some sort of gateways framing the entrance to really let people know this is the entrance to the park. We like this idea because it brings the trail out along the road and makes it very visible for people. So as they're driving by, they can say, "Oh, what is this path that leads in? It looks very interesting," to try and draw people in. As some of you might know, across the street from Staples right now, this land is basically just a retention basin for stormwater right now. Part of the design would be trying to re-engineer that So the stormwater storage would be stored underground, and there would be pavement parking lot above it. All the pavement that we're suggesting used here would be porous pavement, so it allows rainwater to filter down through it into the ground without having to be channelized through storm systems. So some of our recommendations in the plan as we deal toward the implementation of this is that we feel that as sort of the next steps, a detailed survey needs to be done of the property, especially in areas along that public promenade route and pedestrian routes. The idea being we want to, in particular, establish the exact location of all the really nicer, older trees, healthy trees that we would want to try and keep in the design as much as possible. The survey should identify all of those features as precisely as possible. We then think it's important that the exact route of that trail, although we have it drawn here on the map, the exact route of that really needs to be determined by walking in the field and mapping it out, staking it out in person, so that we can be like, okay, we can come around and swoop around these two trees and keep these two trees and identify those on the survey. In some cases, we could have the trail split and go around either side of a large tree that would be in the middle. The idea is to try and not just blast a trail through here, but to try and work around all the nicer, older trees that are there and incorporate them into design. We also recommend that the construction documents for this, even though it might be built out in phases, we recommend that the construction documents for this project be done for the entire full design up front. And that way the town could later have the ability to say, okay, when we want to send this out to bid, we can select, okay, this part we'll send out to bid as the first part, we'll save this for a future phase, but we'd prefer that all of it be done up front, and that way the town can also decide how it wants to phase it. Some of our other recommendations are on the east side along Maxwell. Here's Staples right here, public safety building up here. There are 3 red maple trees that are kind of somewhat hidden depending on the time of year. 3 red maple trees that are actually really spectacular examples, and they're wonderfully vibrant in the fall. We recommend that these trees be preserved and incorporated into the design. The other pine trees along that route, those can be replaced with new trees, but we would like to keep these and incorporate them into the design of the treescape that goes up the path along that road. And as far as planning outside the park, I mentioned there are considerations outside the boundaries. The first priority for us is that this pedestrian path which comes through, right now it's scheduled to basically stop as it crosses Maxwell. We would highly recommend that this same path, the same 15-foot wide path, be continued east and continue on over into the town center, connect to as much of the businesses over on that side as possible. We think that that would be a very high priority element. One of the elements of the park is this little picnic grove that is located in the southeast corner of the site. That was added because a lot of people suggested this would be a great place to just, for lunch, if you work in this area, just pop on over here, take a stroll into the woods, relax, and have a nice picnic lunch. And it's kind of easy in, easy out, and it's a nice secluded area. Picnic lunch, a lot of the businesses here, I think, would benefit from people being able to know that, hey, I can just bring my lunch over there with the kids and have a little picnic. Second priority is a connection to the library, or connection south. So here's the town park property. We would recommend that from the existing older trail, there's the access easement, that a new trail be established which comes down south just to the west of the elementary school, as far west as possible along the little waterway stream, and connect down to this trail right here, which is seen in the photo. And that would provide connection from the library up to the park and through the whole network as well. We also suggest that that stream crossing right there, which is existing, that stream crossing right now is just a small culvert or two that's heavily restricting the water flow right now. We would recommend some wetland remediation in this area to try and open that up, dechannelize it a little bit so it's a more free flow of water and help the ecology of that area. And then also in the future, as time permits, and some of the properties to the north seek redevelopment, that the town pursue an idea of how to connect the town park to Collins Park to the north. As far as phasing is concerned, there are a lot of different ways this could be done. We toyed around with different options. Obviously, the whole thing could be built in one fell swoop. That may not always be suitable or realistic. So what we've done is looked at a couple of different options. Right now, for the report, for the purposes of the report as an example, what we've done is established as phase one is to really establish the core functionality of the park, which is ideally the pedestrian connection east-west, some parking, and this glade here. So you have that basic functionality as well as the picnic area as part of phase one. And then phase two would be adding the bathrooms, picnic pavilions, outdoor classroom, and these trails which wind their way through this part of it as part of phase two. Right now in the schematic cost estimate, the total project cost for this we're estimating right now, schematically at least, at about $3.7 million. The way we've shown the phasing in this scenario, phase one would be about $2.5 million, and phase two would be $1.1 million. But depending on how the town will have the option to phase it however they want, break it up into more phases or less, and add stuff and see as they fit, that will be determined by you guys as you work on the budget. We also looked at some scenarios for operation and maintenance. We worked out a scenario that would include what would it cost to mow, plow, and maintain the labor on the park, including repairing and replacing any busted elements, site furnishings, the allowance for special events, having a couple of special events per year in the park that might require people out there running things, the cost of utilities, the cost of equipment and materials to be about $73,000 a year. That's a pretty good estimate, we feel. And also we're looking at some different funding options for this. As many of you know, Jim Tedisco recently awarded the town $250,000 toward the park. The report goes into some different state and federal funding options which the town could pursue to also achieve more money for this, as well as the idea of how volunteer services and donations can work. For example, the town could solicit donations to help build that park gazebo, the performance gazebo. Would somebody like to put forward money to have their name put on that element? That could be one way to have some elements put in, such as benches and other features. Also through Saratoga County, the school district, and the town of Clifton Park, different funding options for that. So overall, right now, the plan is, as right now, is done. That was loud. We have copies of this are available right now on the town website, correct? So if you'd like to take a look, I know some light reading, but we're hoping that everybody takes a look and gets us their feedback. We are very excited that we sort of have wrapped this up in the year, and very much looking forward to seeing the next phase of this move forward. A lot of what we heard from people was that they didn't want to just see this plan done and then have it not go anywhere. They wanted a lot of momentum to okay, now let's get out there and build it. So we'd like to see the town move forward as quickly as possible.
So just to point out a few areas of significance, when we first viewed this plan a month or so ago, it was with the committee that we appointed to help guide the process, this full planning process. And at that point, the committee was unanimously in favor of moving forward with this particular plan, as well as the phasing. A couple of things. This plan combines opportunities for active recreation, passive recreation, planned community events of all kinds. We have a lot of good ideas of what we can do within that property. Activities during any season of the year, any time of the day, some really exciting opportunities in the future. We wanted to, as we've been saying, improve the access. Obviously, with parking on one side, Monroe Road Trail is still an access point on the other side, but allowing for parking on the site will go a long way in improving the access and improving the functionality. Right now, as I said, it's basically a natural area with some rough trails. As you can see with what was described to you in the presentation, many more opportunities for various uses within the park, as I just described. From the first meeting on, one thing that I would really like to do is incorporate Collins Park into this plan, either in the initial phase or at some point in the near future. I think there's some very good possibilities there. Now you can access the 37 acres from Collins Park by using the Monroe Road Trail, short walk, but we would like to eventually attain an access point that would connect the 37 acres to Collins Park. It doesn't have to be a large access point. Could be a pedestrian trail in that case. I'm not sure what it'll look like in the future. But I think getting an access point between Collins Park and this property at some point in the near future would be a very important priority. So those are just some things I wanted to point out. I do, and also unique features. We have some opportunity for some unique features that are not currently evident in our other parks. We have a lot of natural areas, property that we've permanently preserved, 1,700 acres that we preserved, and so we have natural areas, and it's important to secure that property because future generations will have it available. This town cannot utilize that property for something different than what you see today, if in fact the town doesn't own it at some point, right? So whether it's a Garnsey Park or Dwaskill Nature Preserve or all the property we've added to Veterans Park, those areas might have a different use someday. I'm sure it'll be decades from now, but you never know what the town needs will be 10, 20, 50 years from now. And I think the same is true here. This initial plan is exactly that, an initial plan. But that plan can certainly change over time, and what a town board might envision, again, 10, 20, 50 years from now, might be completely different from what you see in front of you here tonight. But we'll see how things evolve. But overall, the committee was very pleased. I know the reaction from town board members has been very positive as well. I do want to thank everybody that's been a part of this process. It's a long process. There's a tremendous amount of work involved. I think back to all the people that were involved throughout the town collecting signatures when the property was slated to be sold, and collecting the signatures forced a referendum vote, and then of course the referendum vote was a huge plurality against that the sale of the property to a private entity, which gave the town the opportunity to then purchase the property from the school district. And so you think about all the work and all the people that were involved from that point of the process forward, all of the public meetings that were just identified that have occurred through this process, the design workshops and the charrettes and the public meetings, this design is really, yes, it incorporates some ideas from our committee, from the town board, but mostly what you see is from the information that was collected at the public meetings. And that is the most important points of this entire process as we move forward to get to this day. So this might be the end of one phase in the planning process, but it's really just the beginning of what will be an exciting asset for this town for generations into the future. And that's what excites me and a lot of people in this room, and certainly people on the dais here. So again, I do want to thank everybody that's been involved in the process from the very beginning. Are there any questions about what you see here tonight? Are there any questions at all? No? Oh, yes.
I'm just curious, what's the parking capacity going to be?
Well, based on the rough sketch we have there, Mike, how many spots are there?
I believe we had 50 spots on the east side.
Okay, 50 on the east.
And then initially 24 on the west side, but it has room to expand to about almost double, about 50 on the west side there.
Okay. So we're looking at about roughly 100 between the two.
And one thing to note is the parking on the east side, that could also help augment the parking at the public safety building at times when they're overrun, which sometimes, I guess, once a week at least. So we thought that was a useful.
Must be ticket night.
Traffic court night.
Yes. That's more than once a month, isn't it, Bob? 4 nights a month. Any other? Oh, yes, sir.
You guys said that you want to keep like that bottom right half like preserved.
Yeah.
So are you gonna pave that trail as well? Or are you gonna keep it there to like try to preserve it?
This one,
Yeah, that
blocking
one.
that. These trails all in through here would not be paved. These would be like a what's the word?
Stone dust?
Or just wood chips or stone dusting. It would really be, this would be the paved one. These would be sort of informal.
And then would you have anything like to like enhance like I guess you could say like nature and like did I see those little darker spots? Like in all those other spots, like you have something planned out for you, anything planned for those? Not that one, those three on the trail, yeah.
Oh, that's really just the way it was rendered,
Yeah.
just to highlight the edge of the trees. There isn't necessarily anything planned specifically along this trail, but we thought that we would have some identification markers along the way to identify any species of trees and plants and so forth along the way. So.
If you've ever been down to the Bishop Ferry Preserve, have you?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so it's right off Riverview Road.
Yeah.
It's several hundred acres, and the town manages that park. A few years ago, we completed a trail that goes from the main parking area, just in that general area, eastward. And at the end of the trail, you look up and you're under the Twin Bridges. And we built bridges because there's a lot of water features there. So to make that long connection, you needed bridges at a few different points. The reason I'm bringing this up is one of our major trail projects is that's a stone dust trail, and that'll give you an idea of what one of the options that we'll be looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. But if you haven't had a chance to get down there, check it out. It's a cool trail. Yes?
So what happens now? What are the next steps?
Well, at this point, the town board will be considering what the future options will be and what the timing will be. There are some initial steps that they mentioned, such as a survey and some other things that we need to consider initially. But the timing and the priorities will be finalized in the not too distant future. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I remember where the lighting was brought up. And that maybe about that tonight, it had been eliminated.
Sorry, we were just the main path, the main east-west path. We were hoping to have some low pedestrian lighting that would be as minimal as possible to provide a safe passage through there. But just it would just be along that main east-west spine. It wouldn't be on any of the side trails.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember at the September meeting, there was a great deal of interest in having a building permanently placed there in order to accommodate the arts and et cetera, but
Right.
it has not been mentioned. You mentioned about an amphitheater. Is that dead in the water, or?
No, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say so.
Where could something like that be placed?
I did ask them to look at that, and I think it was just it was on the northern part of it, right, Mike?
Well, we do
Close
address
to close to the parking area.
We do address that in the plan, in the sense that what we were recommending is that at this point, we don't know what the actual needs of the town of Clifton Park are as far as programming for an arts center. Is it going to have theater, have what size space, what capacity? There were too many unanswered questions to design that at this time. What we are suggesting is that it could be located at the edge of the park, and that we would recommend that the town really conduct a more detailed study to figure out what does the town actually need, what sort of art program facility would support this community, and then we can sort of size it and generate how might it be funded, because it might be possible to put it adjacent to the park in perhaps a vacant existing building as an interim to get it started. There's a lot of different options. So there's a portion of the plan which sort of outlines our thoughts on that.
Because there are a fair number of people involved in the process that did not want to see any buildings on this 37 acres ever. What I've said is, well, that might be true for the foreseeable future as far as what we can see currently sitting here today. But, as I said earlier, what future town boards might decide to do and what the needs of the town might be in the future, I'd be hard-pressed to guarantee anybody at this point that there will never be a building built on that property. Could be multiple buildings, for all I know. Again, nothing that I foresee happening in the near future, but I didn't want anybody to get the idea that I thought the town would never build a building there at some point. Because it's centrally located, it's 37 acres. Who knows, a town board in the future might build a new town hall there, or an arts, or an arts. It won't be this one. I can get not while I'm here. It could be an arts center. It could be, who knows? Who knows? But I would think at some point that's a real possibility.
Especially since that group is all over the place trying to give presentations during the summertime and
Right.
during the winter you're going to the high school. You don't have a permanent building to do these type of things. And so it seems as though a building like that could accommodate musicals in place, and perhaps also be able to rent it out to someone who might want to have a wedding, shower, bar mitzvah,
Sure.
or whatever.
Sure.
The building doesn't have to stand there just for entertainment. It seems that it could be a multiple usage.
Yeah, and I would say for something like that, whether it was on this property or another piece of property, wherever a building like that might eventually be placed, it does need some intensive study and forethought to make sure it's done right. And if you do that, and you can rally public support around an initiative of this type, just like we have with the park. You can certainly rally the community around something like the community center that would serve a broad spectrum of the of the people in Clifton Park of all ages, with various activities that could be had there, or a place, like you said, that you could even rent out for weddings and things of that nature. But there does need to be more thought and study into what it would actually look like. And that would be an important step to accomplish first. And Pat might have some ideas, I don't know. I don't know. I'd be shocked, but she might.
Want to see my plan?
Yes. Oh, she's got a plan, hold on. A dissertation. Oh, hi, Mr. Fields, how are you?
I have a question about
Buckeye's cut it a little close to you tonight.
I think since it's located to a densely populated area, would maybe most people be walking from areas there, and that parking, a lot of people would go to Garnsey Park or Veterans Park for driving, that, you know, if you had smaller parking, and in the beginning, if you needed, you could expand it, but I do believe we wanted to leave it as natural as, you know, not provide places for parking. Once you put a building in there or something, you need a lot of parking for any type of weddings and stuff like that, you know, so.
Yeah, if a building ever did get placed on this parcel, yeah, I mean, the parking, you would need a fair amount of parking, there's no doubt.
Would they consider where the people would be coming from to go to this park? Did you guys talk about that?
Well, yeah, with everything I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, Frank,
Yeah.
everything that we've done around this parcel already, and what we're looking to do in the future as far as pedestrian connection points, and the pedestrian connection points that are currently in place, we're hoping to make it a more inviting place for people to visit via foot, bike, you know, so that is a big priority. Now, we also understand that this is not Arizona, so there's certain points of the year where it's a lot less inviting. But certainly, I mean, a lot of our parks are heavily used in the wintertime. There's people out there snowshoeing and running and, you know, in 0-degree weather. So, but the key is that we do make this more inviting for people that work around the area, visit the Exit 9 area, or go just to visit this park. But we need to continue to make it more accessible, the entire area I'm talking about, make the entire area more accessible and more pedestrian friendly. So we've done a lot to get to satisfy that goal, and I mentioned some things that we're working toward that will be completed in 2020. Yes, right.
You mentioned early on that there were a lot of rough trails in there, and there certainly are.
Yeah.
But one of the major uses for this parcel has been by the kids at Schneider-Hope.
Right.
Especially now going to the elementary schools to the south from Moe Road. I know that phase one, you're talking about the east-west trail primarily, but as I recall, the trail going to the elementary schools crosses that problem area where the culverts are, and it's very wet all the time, and it's stagnant water. There should probably be, I think, a provision for when phase one is being done to at least maintain and maybe slightly improve that section of the trail going to the school, to the elementary school.
Yeah, you saw that on one of the slides, right?
Well, in our walks, we've seen the...
No, I know, but it was identified tonight, so I want to make sure that you know we didn't miss that.
Okay.
But you're right, you're absolutely right.
But I'm just saying, I think it probably should be maintained as kind of like a phase one feature, because it is kind of like a natural highway right now.
Right, right. And then fully utilized in the future,
Yep.
is what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Anyone else? Any questions or comments at this time? Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments? I know we've talked about this quite a bit over the last couple of years, that's for sure. And it's taken some time and many steps just to get to this point. But we're very excited about it. So, very good. Again, I want to thank everybody for your participation. All right. So we only have a few resolutions here. Rather light, Pat. Could you read through those, please?
Resolution scheduling the 2020 organizational meeting and the first 2020 town board meeting in the town of Clifton Park. Where the town board wishes to schedule the 2020 organizational meeting and the first 2020 town board meeting. Now, therefore, be resolved that the 2020 organizational meeting of the town of Clifton Park will be held on Monday, January 6th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Region World Meeting Room on Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York. Be further resolved that the first town board meeting in 2020 will be held on January 6th, 2020, immediately following the organizational meeting in the Wood Memorial Room on Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York. A resolution authorizing the promotion of Justin Lafayette and Scott Shaughnessy, currently motor equipment operator light, grade 4, to motor equipment operator grade 5 in the Buildings and Grounds Department. Whereas Buildings and Grounds Supervisor Dan Cummins has expressed the need for 2 MEOs in the department. Whereas Mr. Cummins recommends that Justin Lafayette and Scott Shaughnessy be promoted from MEO light to MEO in the Buildings and Grounds Department. And whereas the above referenced employees are qualified for the position for civil service classification, that it be resolved that Justin Lafayette, crew and road Clifton Park is hereby promoted to MEO grade 5 step 1, $47,439 per year, effective immediately. Be it further resolved that Scott Shaughnessy, person of the road Clifton Park is hereby promoted to MEO grade 5 step 1, $47,439 a year, effective immediately. Be it further resolved that the additional payroll salary increases be paid with a transfer $345.60 from the overtime to their payroll. Resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an amendment to the administrative services agreement between the town and Mass Mutual for the employees' deferred compensation plan. Whereas the town of Clifton Park is a local public employer which has adopted a deferred compensation plan pursuant to Section 5 of the New York State Finance Law. And whereas the purpose of such plan is to provide employees with a convenient and tax-favored method of saving on a regular and long-term basis, and thereby provide for their retirement. And whereas by resolution number 274, 2016, the town board awarded a 5-year renewal agreement with Mass Mutual in conjunction with Reliance Trust Company to administer this plan under procedures set forth by the New York State Deferred Compensation Board. And whereas Mass Mutual has informed the town that numerous investment options will be changed for Exhibit C effective in January 2020. And whereas Mass Mutual has also informed the town that it will offer managed account services through InvestNet Retirement Solutions LLC at no cost to the town. And whereas proposals were reviewed by the Deferred Compensation Committee, which recommended that the agreements be accepted, now therefore be resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized to sign an amendment to its contract with Mass Mutual Life Insurance Company in conjunction with Reliance Trust Company as trustee. And be it further resolved that the supervisor is also authorized to sign an agreement for managed account services with InvestNet Retirement Solutions LLC.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Any questions on the resolution? None? Okay, Pat, if you read the heading, and we'll consider each one individually.
Resolution number 271 of 2019, a resolution scheduling the 2020 organizational meeting and the first 2020 town board meeting for the town of Clifton Park.
So moved.
Second?
By Mrs. Standard, second by Ms. Wallowit. Every December, we pass a resolution establishing the first meeting of the new year. So we'll be kicking off the new year on January 6th, 2020 already. Pretty amazing. Time flies. This is Pat's second to last meeting of her very lengthy career. We will miss her tremendously, and she will miss us. be just as much, if not more, especially on Monday night.
Not during the day. Councilwoman Standard.
Yes.
Milano.
Yes.
Councilman Ballhorn.
Yes.
President.
Yes.
Resolution number 272 of 2019, a resolution authorizing the promotion of Scott Schumacher and Scott Shaughnessy, currently motor equipment operator light, grade 4, to motor equipment operator grade 5 in the buildings and grounds department. Second.
Moved by Mr. Romano, second by Ms. Wallet. Dan?
Yeah, this is kind of a normal progression in the Buildings and Grounds Department. We'll hire somebody as a laborer, and then move to an MEO light, then to an MEO, and then possibly down the road either to a senior MEO. These two guys both came to us as seasonal workers. Justin came right out of high school, probably 10 years ago, what we call a summer guy. He worked at the Common. Both of these guys put in a couple seasons over at the golf course and made it through Fred training, so you know they're pretty good before we took them full-time over to us. And they're both very talented, hard-working guys, and have put a lot of time in on the equipment, and they're really good operators and very much deserve to get promoted at this point.
Very good. Any questions for Dan? Pat?
Councilman Standard.
Yes.
Councilman Milano.
Yes.
Councilman Ballhorn.
Yes.
President Barrett.
Yes.
Resolution number 273, 2019, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an amendment to the administrative services agreement between the town and Mass Mutual for the employees' deferred compensation plan.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Ms. Wallet. Discussion.
Councilman Standard.
Yes.
Councilman Milano.
Yes.
Councilman Ballhorn.
Yes.
President.
Yes, any other business to come before the board this evening? None. We'll go to public privilege. If you'd like to speak on a town matter, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward. State your name and address for the record, and please keep it at 5 minutes or less. Is anybody there from our high school least representatives? No?
No?
Nobody wants to talk? Anybody at all? Anybody that would like to? Yeah, they just. I think they're ready to go. They've had so much excitement tonight. They'll be up all night telling everybody they know about this exciting town meeting they went to. Just think, 10, 20 years from now, when you see that park really start to evolve, you'll say, "I was at the meeting when they talked about it." Wow! Put that on your resume.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.